of course only remarkable if you think that the drawing in the Tenschert Hours is to be dated around 1407, 1408. If it's much later, it becomes less rare and therefore less remarkable. The peculiar ribbon may have been used by the Visconti, but it was a very common element. And the comparison I show here also makes clear why the drawings in the Book of Hours are so irritating in this respect. Because not only the targes are left blank, also the helmets do not have a crest. Both targes and helmets are nondescript, and the relationship with the Visconti is far from obvious. I'm not saying it could be anybody, but a relationship with the Visconti is not obvious, is not compelling. Now, as Professor Koenig points out, the text in the Tenschert Hours includes a prayer that is most interesting. It is a prayer for a safe journey. It was M.Schmidt, in his book on the late 14th century and the patronage of the Duke, who first pointed out the importance of this prayer, because it is a rare prayer in Book of Hours. And the earliest examples are found in manuscript with an obvious connection to Jean de Berry. First of all, there is the Belle Heure, and there is a now lost miniature once in the collection of this Auguste de Bâtard d'Étain, and it was possibly, but it's not very clear, I think, possibly came from the Très Belle Heure de Notre Dame, which is another manuscript owned by the Duke, and the prayer was added in the second instance to the Petite Heure. The Petite Heure is a 14th century small book of hours. It was owned by the Duke of Berry, and at a later stage it was the prayer with a miniature was added by the Limbourg Brothers. There's a general consensus about this. Now, how can this be of interest? And I quote here Millet-Mies. The Duke apparently became interested in the prayer around 1408, 1410. And at this time he was actually traveling less than formerly, but the struggle between the Armagnacs and the Burgundians had become more bitter, and after Jean sans Peur had perpetrated the incredibly audacious murder of Louis d'Orléans in 1407, no one in France could feel safe, least of all a leading Armagnac, by which he means, of course, the Jean de Berry. And this is a hypothesis that seems to be generally accepted. It was also referred to, for instance, by Timothy Husband on his recent book on the Belle Heure. Now, the inclusion of this prayer in the Tenschert Hours was added, according to Professor Koenig, it was added at the behest of Jean de Berry after the murder of Louis d'Orléans in 1407. Again, this hypothesis would automatically provide us with a dating for the manuscript. But I would like to point out that the text is not rare. The text is rare for a book of hours, which is something different. It is a text that occurs in the Roman breviary, and it also occurs in the Roman pontifical. And it is a prayer for a prelate, or a clergyman in general, for a safe journey. And in this case, it has been appropriated by a lay person, as such, quite an interesting phenomenon. Now, in general, and we know this, it is not rare to find special texts in a book of hours, particularly among additional prayers, of which this is one. A great variety of personal taste can be seen. 3. It may well be that this text had a personal significance for Jean de Berry, but I'm not quite sure whether it is this relation with the murder of Louis d'Orléans is absolutely compelling, because you would think that a prayer for the safe return for a journey would have been always welcome. The other thing is that the miniatures themselves do not give specific clues either. We have here the Belle Heure. We obviously have a party returning to a castle. The party returning because they're moving towards the general flow of the text, so they clearly are returning. And it generally assumed that the man in red, with his black headgear and riding this white horse, is Jean de Berry himself. Now, there is what I find striking is that the small banners on the turrets, they go upwards into the border. Then you see the banners from the castle, and they bear the colors of Burgundy, blue and gold. Now, if there really was a relation between the insertion of the prayer and the murder of Louis d'Orléans, why add the banners of the murderers? Husband, tries to accommodate this view and says, well, maybe it refers to the numerous attempts by Jean de Berry to mediate between the two factions, so the Armagnacs and the Burgundians. Perhaps, I don't know, but I find it striking, and to me this explanation is not particularly obvious. Now the Petite Heure, which is striking because it is a totally different miniature altogether. We see Jean de Berry on foot, not on horseback, and he is not coming back, but he's setting out. He's setting out on a pilgrimage. He is on foot. He has a pilgrimage staff, and there's a small pilgrimage staff as a kind of insignia, is embroidered on his long black garment. And I have the impression that the Limbourgs reread the text of this particular prayer for the occasion. You see here the English translation, and it runs, O God, who made us the children of Israel to walk with dry feet through the midst of the sea, and who didst open unto the 3 wise men by the guiding of a star, the way that led unto thee. Grant us good speed and quietness. May thy holy angel accompany us, and we see the holy angel in top of the miniature, may accompany us during our pilgrimage, and in the end may we attain the haven of eternal salvation. And here you see that it's probably, or I have the impression that it's just not just a pilgrimage, but more likely a metaphorical pilgrimage. That is, not a pilgrimage towards a particular goal in the here and now, but the final goal in the hereafter, i.e. the heavenly Jerusalem. Now, the insertion of the text in the Tenschert Hours, I just ask myself, why add this prayer, seemingly prompted by the murder of Louis d'Orléans, in a book of hours that was supposedly intended for the very victim? If you're really cynical, you could say, it comes a bit late, doesn't it? Or
for Valentina, I didn't say for Louis. I said when he was dead, the thing was.
Or my second sentence. Or was it intended for the bereaved widow, who would not have travelled much on her own? I must confess, it all sounds very complicated. It becomes less complicated when we suppose that there is no direct relation with Jean de Berry, no direct relation to the supposed owners of the Book of Hours, nor a dating of the manuscript around 1407, 1408. That does not mean that the Book of Hours does not have a relation with the Belle Heure, but because that relationship was quite clear from the start. And we know, and we have seen also this morning, that later artists, in one way or another, had access to the designs of the Belle Heure. Some of them copied it slavely, others approached it in a more creative manner. So, to conclude this brief contribution, I am quite happy to accept that the Tenschert Hours is a Parisian book of hours, intended for someone who was in some way related to the French court. That's the whole question of the calendar, and that is all explained very clearly in the catalogue. Now, in this way, you would say the quality of the drawings would be matched by the quality of the patronage. I'm also prepared to consider the drawings in connection with the so-called Master of St. Jerome, although I must confess there are many technical aspects of the drawings that I simply do not understand. What worries me a little bit is that the attribution to the Limbourgs, or a Limbourg, is not compelling at least not to me. I'm also worried about the lack of clear, independent clues as to the dating and commission. And I'm afraid that the hypothesis about the attribution, dating, patron, and intended owner strike me as a construction with a small basis. But it remains a fascinating manuscript, and we are very grateful that we are able to see it. And that's what I want to say.